Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for March 13th, 2017. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Where we last left off last week, we were talking about 76.5 being the most important pivot here on the chart at the moment. We mentioned that this big blow off top in the 2401 was rejected. Bulls failed to hold price above that 2360 76.5, and that's when price started to drop down, made it resistance. Friday made it resistance right on the button again. So we know right now that bears are trying to keep this area offered after being rejected here, the bulls, and now there are buy stops building above. So if the bulls are able to push through 76.5 here, we could see a retest of this high in the 2400 and perhaps beyond. We did have a very narrow range last week in terms of overall price movement here. Not much range overall, tightly coiled price action. So above 76.5 would squeeze into 2400 and beyond. Failure to get above 76.5 will open up a push down toward the lower edge of the range here. And right now we have an edge that's 2350. Below there could run this thing a little bit more. We have an LVN down. Obviously this thing has been very, very bullish. So any pullback to any degree could be a great buying opportunity for more strength. And this has to really prove that it wants to go down, and it hasn't right now. So you got to continue to look for buying opportunities and squeeze to the upside. Right now, anything above 76.5 would squeeze. Looking at the intraday time frame here, this is a 512 tick chart. It's basically prices just coiling around 1 and 5 day VPOC at the moment. We have kind of a bulky range that is formed here with an LVN on either side here above 2374, below 2360. Nice balanced range here, and that's where we're trading at the moment. So at present, the ES is chopping around value. Very difficult to do anything with regards to this current zone. But if price were to come down into 2360, 2360 down here is a good area to begin looking for opportunities to fade back up. You can see every time we've gotten down below that area, that's where the market has turned. One time it got real deep. So down into 2360 would be a fade back toward value, into 2370, 2368. Likewise, any push into 2376 could be a short-term opportunity to bring it back down. But again, above 76.5 would begin to squeeze. All right, let's take a look here at crude oil. Here's a look at crude. Let's bring it to the higher time frame. There we go. So right now we have a major sell-off that's occurred. If I bring this back and we look back here, you can see how narrow that range was. Very narrow range. I had been referencing that range before because you can see how much energy that range created, and we got that release to the downside into about 38. We saw the same type of range develop here. Very, very tightly coiled, chunky range. Very similar and reminiscent, and we've only begun to see our breakdown out of this range. As I mentioned before, this tight range, no matter which way we got a breakout, was going to be significant. If it was going to be to the downside, there was high odds that we were going to see this target at 46.69, with a likelihood that price could continue to the opposite edge of the range. We got rejection that begins below 43 and also goes as low as 39. So we have some major targets that we could see reached along the way. Right now, any bounce toward 50 could be a great selling opportunity for a drop down. Even if this thing were to bounce as high as 50 or 50.5, it could still be a selling opportunity right now. So we got to see what happens here in the upcoming week. One last thing to mention is anytime you have a week that's this far stretched, big stretched week here, this week tends to be a little bit more range bound. So you tend to see a little bit more digestion. And in failing to hold, should this fail to hold below the previous week's low, that would be an indication of a bounce back toward the weekly pivot range, at which point we could begin to see some sort of range develop. So let's take a look at the intraday time frame for that. On an intraday basis here, you can see that price is kind of coiling at the moment around the previous week's close and low. A little bit of higher lows coming into it at the moment, kind of lower highs, so it's kind of coiling here. This is the previous week's close, previous week's low. So above 48.60 would begin to squeeze back toward 50. And again, should price reach that 50 level up there between 50 and 50.20, that could be a fantastic sell opportunity back down. All right, let's take a look here at gold futures. Here's a look at gold. The higher time frame gold shows the price has bounced a little bit here off the low, but continues to be in a very, very bearish downtrending market. You can see how much this thing has dropped here recently after hitting our 1263.20 key level. One thing you notice about a downtrending market, if price comes into the previous high and rejects, it's usually a sign of more weakness to come. And right now, here's the previous session's high, here's the 2-day high. Price is rejecting and is now already back on lows. That could be a fantastic selling opportunity for a continuation throughout the first part of the week. One thing we know about a downtrending market as well, when you open below the weekly pivot range, rally into the pivot range and begin to see weakness, again, that's another selling opportunity for a continuation lower. The next downside targets to reach are going to be 1180 right here and the 25% expansion target, which is about 1184. So that's the next zone to reach to the downside. And then we have the 100% expansion target at 1170 below. But right now, any drop into 1180 could be an opportunity to watch for a rejection or at least a bounce. So right now, with this rejection off the pivot range, it could be an opportunity to sell toward 1180. Once it gets to 1180, it may be a counter trend bounce toward 1195. All right, let's take a look at the intraday time frame. On an intraday basis here, you can see how this thing has rejected prices above 1210, 1211, and has dropped back below 1205. 1205 has been MCB here. Also when offered through VWAP. So any bounce into VWAP here, 1207, 1206 could be an opportunity to sell it for a shot at testing the low. So that could be a day trade that opportunity that pops up. But again, any bounce into this 1206, 1207 could be an opportunity to sell, as that is 5-day VPOC, VWAP, and the previous session's high. Those are going to be areas that bears are going to want to defend for a continuation toward 1194.5. Lastly, let's take a look at ZB. In a higher time frame, ZB just bounced off 147.12. 147.12 was our key level. That had been an area of support, and recently price held it one day, went offered through it the next, held through it after that, and right now, pre-market, we're seeing a rejection off that level from below. Additionally, we've had a downtrending market, and this is the pivot range. That's a lower value relationship. Price is rejecting after opening below it, and that's all important. That's very similar to what we mentioned here in gold. So this hold right here could be an indication that bears have the upper hand still, and we could be looking for a continuation toward the next downside targets. I mentioned before 1146 is going to be a next key level to test, with 1143.20 the next major HVN below. So we could be looking at much more weakness to the downside. 46s are here, and the 25% could be the early targets to reach this week, followed by the potential to see more weakness into 143.20 over the span of the next 1 to 2 weeks. Any pushback above 147.12 right now could be an opportunity to squeeze it back toward 149.24. So right now we're starting to develop some buy stops above 47.12s that we'll keep an eye on, but right now still an overall bearish bias to this trend. So right here, 147.12, that's the key level. Bears want to continue to defend it, but should price push above it, that could be an opportunity to squeeze at some point, as the buy stops are now starting to build above. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the rest of the session and the new week ahead. Good luck and trade well.